Hey, welcome back to the Unbelievable Podcast. I am now back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today we are taking a look at your Minnesota Vikings Week 3 matchup against the Tennessee Titans, which is being played at home field at US Bank Stadium. Your Vikings obviously are coming off of a couple clunkers, to say the least. And the Tennessee Titans, on the other hand, are 2-0. Not playing necessarily their best football, but certainly playing better football than the Vikings, at least coming into week 3. So this is a tough matchup for sure. Drew and I will do our best here to break down the individual matchups and take a look at what Tennessee does well and how the Vikings can, at least try to make this a more competitive matchup than I think a lot of us are tending to believe this one may end up right now based off of the previous 2 weeks. So let's just jump right into it here. We generally start with the quarterback, so let's do that. Ryan Tannehill is still the guy in Tennessee. He signs the big offseason deal, and he is now the signal caller for the Titans. And so Tannehill has kind of an interesting career arc, right? Being a former first-round pick, and then before that, a former wide receiver. Didn't do too hot in Miami. Kind of has found a bit of a niche in Tennessee. Obviously, taking that job from Marcus Mariota and sort of running with it over the last year and a half or so. So what are your thoughts on Ryan Tannehill? What are the things that concern you as it pertains to the Vikings defense? I mean, obviously the Vikings coverage hasn't been awesome, but Tannehill isn't necessarily known for being a guy who just throws it all over the field all day long.
Well, I think where he has thrived, especially in Tennessee, has been play action. Play action, taking the shots down the field, hitting his deep weapons, particularly A.J. Brown last year. I believe A.J. Brown was the only receiver in the league with a higher yards per target than Stephon Diggs. And so clearly that guy, now I don't know if he's going to be healthy. I think he missed actually week 2 in their win against Jacksonville. So I'm not sure if he'll be healthy this week or not. That'll be a big question mark going into Sunday. I think that his status is up in the air. But if he is playing, that connection is one to watch. And A.J. Brown clearly has some talent, has some game, and that play action connection down the field was efficient last year. And of course, it all starts with Derrick Henry and his ability to pound the rock, right? And so, you kind of have to start there in a way, but also Tannehill he's found himself a home where he isn't, I guess in Miami, a lot of times he was there was a ton on his shoulders, right? He was, in their wins for Miami to win, he was sort of forced to have an elite dominant game. And now, I'm still on board with for the most part, right? Running backs don't matter, but that argument, so to speak. But in Tennessee, you saw a little bit in the playoffs, man. I mean, Derrick Henry carried that team offensively, and Tannehill had like 70 yards when they beat the Patriots passing in the playoff game. And then the next week only had barely 100, I believe, against the Ravens. And they won that game too, pretty easily. So, he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He's not going to force balls into questionable spots, and he makes good decisions. And then when he can unleash it down the field, especially out of play action, he's accurate. So, of course, getting to the quarterback, getting pressure on the quarterback is always important. I think with Tannehill, it's a little bit more important because if he has time to sit back in that play action situation and throw it deep, he'll be accurate.
Okay, so here's my question for you to follow up on that. So Tannehill is obviously a productive quarterback, right? I don't think anyone, to my knowledge at least, is calling him an elite quarterback or a game-changing quarterback or, face of the franchise type player. Is it fair to call him a system quarterback? Because it's pretty hard to mention Ryan Tannehill without Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I just don't like that term.
I don't think anyone likes it, but
I think every quarterback is a system quarterback to a degree. So, but I think in terms of he's not the guy that's going to carry a team on his shoulders to the playoffs, and I think we're seeing a little bit of that with Kirk as well. So
no kidding.
So I think they're pretty similar. I think they play the same style. They both thrive in the right environment with the right situation around them. And then when things aren't going so great around them, they'll have those few great games and put up some good statistical numbers, but they maybe won't result in wins. So that's I do see a lot of similarities between the two. I think Tannehill, last year with Tennessee and that defense really found its stride down the stretch. And then, of course, being able to hand the ball off to Derrick Henry 30 times for 200 yards. in those playoff games last year really helped as well. So he wasn't asked to do a ton. He's been asked to do a little bit more the past couple weeks, but the Titans have scrapped out a couple wins.
So when you asked that question about, when I asked that question about Tannehill, in reference to him being a system quarterback, right? Immediately your response was, that's has a negative connotation. At least, within the circles that I run, when you hear the term system quarterback, it's never a good thing, right? It's supposed to be, in theory, it's supposed to be a knock on the quarterback's ability to carry a football team. Now, that being said, I think it's unfair for me to not note that Tannehill's actually off to a really good offensive start this year. Right. Just gauging his numbers, 488 passing yards. I mean, it's not incredible, but combined with 6 touchdowns, he's only been sacked twice behind a very solid offensive line, and his QBR is sitting at 85.5 right now. Now, we saw what Kirk Cousins' QBR was the last couple of weeks. That's substantially better than what what Vikings fans have experienced. So this quarterback is nothing to sneeze at. I'm not saying he's the most talented guy in the world, but he is a quarterback that can do a lot of different things well. I don't think he does anything perfectly. He's not a surgical quarterback that's going to run up and down the field, hitting every receiver in sight with tremendous precision. That's not the kind of guy he is. And he's not a deep ball thrower. Like, he's not Josh Allen where he's launching it 70 yards in the air, dropping it right in the bucket. He's not that kind of guy. He's just an efficient quarterback that knows where to go with the football, and he uses his assets around him as well as anyone in the league. I mean, A.J. Brown is an extremely talented player, right? And Corey Davis, who we haven't mentioned yet, but I'm sure will come up more, a former first-round pick, an extremely talented player as well. But, Davis and Brown aren't Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. They aren't Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. I mean, these are two younger players. Davis, two years ago, probably was called a bust. And to date, I mean, he still hasn't really lived up to that first-round pedigree, or really that top, 5 pedigree? I think he was number 5 pick a couple of years ago. So Tannehill is maximizing the talent around him, giving them the best opportunity to succeed. And part of that, of course, is on the coaching staff too. I think that Mike Vrabel and Arthur Smith run a tight ship over there. But Tannehill is the guy that executes this system very effectively, and he's dangerous in that capacity because they're able to control the tempo of the game. I mean, one of the primary reasons why your Vikings have been losing is because they can't stay on the field on offense. I mean, Tennessee, on the flip side of that, they are efficient. They can get first downs with regularity. Their drives are long. I mean, it's a tough team to play against because as soon as they get in front of you, and I do mean as soon as they get in front, it could be 3 points, 7 points, 10 points, 14, whatever. They're going to run the ball down your throat with Derrick Henry. So Let's focus on Derrick Henry now because, as solid of a player as Tannehill is, I do think that the face of the franchise here is Derrick Henry, and it's one of the very few teams, as you said, that truly focuses on a running back and makes it work. So what is it about? I mean, obviously Derrick Henry's a mammoth, right? That's important. You've got a huge dude that can run to 4.5 40 and can break away from people. But what is it about his game that makes him, I don't want to say unique because his size is obviously what makes him unique, but what makes him better than everyone basically not named Christian McCaffrey at this point?
Yeah, so the Titans are kind of like a rich man's version of the 2012 Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
It's just because they, offensively they're relying on the run game so much. They are force feeding their running back, right? Henry had 31 carries week 1, 25 carries last week. It's not like he's turning out humongous yards in those two games, but they're sticking to it and grounding out the clock when they do have that lead, which was the case in both games. And you'll notice, and I've one of my close friends is a Titans fan, and he's said this for a long time too. He gets so much better as the season goes on. Especially talk about colder weather, talk about teams getting worn out from injuries, getting worn out week to week, battling through the nicks and the bruises, right? And then all of a sudden you have to come up one week and Derrick Henry is running at you full speed. Like, that does wear on you, and he takes advantage of that. So the Titans have this formula that, it sort of goes against the analytics, right? Where, so much of it is pass the ball, your yards per attempt and your efficiency passing is so much more important. But what the Titans are kind of going against the grain with here is, we're going to run the ball just a crap ton. And then we're going to have our passing attack be just efficient enough, especially in the play action game, that we're going to stay afloat and then we're going to trust our defense, in those key playoff games, and it really worked last year. Of course, they ran into the buzzsaw that is Patrick Mahomes in the AFC Championship game, but they destroyed Baltimore, right? I mean, Baltimore was the most dominant team in the league last year. Titans went into their stadium and, destroyed them with this formula with Derrick Henry. So the guy, and from what we've seen with the Vikings run defense first 2 weeks, I see no reason to believe the Vikings will stop him in any capacity, contain him in any capacity. The Vikings front four is very, I don't want to call it weak because that's a mean word, but inexperienced.
It's fair though.
It probably. I mean, it's inexperienced. It is. I'm trying to be a little politically correct to be nice about this, but here's the deal. Jonathan Taylor is a rookie, no experience in the NFL essentially as a lead back. Took 10 or 12 carries in the first drive of that game, and I don't think he was stopped for a loss or a no gain on any of them. So he had what he wanted. Derrick Henry is only going to be harder to tackle than that. So, I mean, if you have Derrick Henry on your fantasy team, start him. If you are playing DraftKings or daily fantasy, please put Derrick Henry in your starting lineup because the Vikings are going to surrender lots of yards, probably a couple touchdowns to that man.
Okay, so you just established kind of what I was already thinking, and that's, the Vikings are going to have problem controlling Derrick Henry. And that's the case for most teams, but probably more so for your Vikings because, Jaleel Johnson hasn't gotten it done. He just hasn't even flashed even potential to date, in my personal opinion. Fedio Donigbo has not been, we hyped him up quite a bit and, kind of felt like he had an opportunity to show out a little bit. And Odenigbo hasn't really been, he's been non-existent to a degree as well. And with exception to, the forced fumble sack that Ngakoue had last week, I mean, this front four, none of them, with the exception of maybe Shamar Stephen, who is a clogger and kind of inherently known for being a solid run defender, none of these guys are very good run defenders. I mean, specifically Ngakoue, it's the biggest knock on his resume to date is that he does not defend the run well. He's basically a glorified, pass rushing specialist. So that's a dangerous combination when you've got Derrick Henry coming to town. And it doesn't help that Anthony Barr is going to be out either because, of course, he has the torn pectoral muscle and will miss the rest of the season. So that brings Eric Wilson, I believe, will step into his role. And then Ryan Connolly, I believe, is slated to be the guy who gets the majority of the snaps. I wouldn't be surprised. Well, you know what? I take that back because of the team they're playing. In most circumstances, with Anthony Barr out, I would expect the Vikings to run, a 4-2-5 defense. But because you're playing Derrick Henry, I think they have to stack the box. And I just don't know if the Vikings have the personnel to do that right now.
Yeah, that's the scary part about this. I mean, everything about this matchup is, green, all systems go for Derrick Henry this week. Vikings are decimated. They're 0-2, and they're, clearly the momentum is very much not on their side. Tennessee's 2-0. They've been feeding Derrick Henry nonstop for 2 weeks, and he's sort of really grinding at the bit to get that breakthrough performance, breakthrough long run, whatever the case may be, that he hasn't had yet. And in some ways, you kind of think he's due for that
14
big
yards.
Performance.
That's his long this year.
That's the thing. He has and if you remember last year down the stretch, that last probably month and a half of the season, he just ran down teams with both, wearing him down with those 3, 4, 5 yards every play, but then also he'd break through for the 60, 70-yard touchdown that he hasn't done yet this year. So, but they're not, that's the thing about this team. They're not going to go away from that identity. He's averaging his efficiency's down quite a bit as of now against Denver and then Jacksonville. They've slowed him down pretty well. So that they're not going to go away from that if he's not maybe busting out the big gain. They're going to keep going to him. They're going to keep wearing you down. And that's how they're going to get first downs. They're going to keep running him on first and second down, and they're going to get it to 3rd and 3. They're going to drop off a little slant or something to Jonnu Smith for a first down. So, and by the way, Jonnu Smith, got to talk about that guy because he's an athlete and he's tough to cover, and he's an underrated tight end.
So the rushing attack is the main focus. This is a true 50-50 team through 2 weeks, by the way. 68 rushing attempts, 67 passing attempts. 2 of those, 2 extra pass attempts that ended up resulting in sacks. So Tannehill's dropped back 69 times and handed off to Derrick Henry called his own number. Cameron Batson, who I'm not familiar with. Senorice Perry, who I'm also not familiar with. And Jeremy McNichols, who Boise State player from several years back. That is all 5 of those guys are going to have rush attempts. So this is a true 50-50 team. But they have counted on when Henry isn't at his most efficient, which is as it has been for the last 2 weeks, as you stated, they have counted on Ryan Tannehill to be efficient.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, I suppose. And he has been, 70% completion, 7.3 yards per attempt average. That's going to get it done in most cases. And so let's talk about those playmakers that he's working with and that has been able to kind of spread the ball around to. It starts with A.J. Brown and Corey Davis just because those are the big-name wide receivers. But for the first 2 weeks of this season, the most dangerous playmaker is the guy that you just said, and that's Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, he reminds me – this is going to sound a little insane at first, maybe to some, but he reminds me of Vernon Davis.
Okay, I see that too. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, he reminds me of Vernon Davis. He moves a lot like him. He's quick. He's agile. He's not like a large tight end, right? Like you don't look at him and think that he doesn't remind you like Tony Gonzalez, for example, or like Antonio Gates. They're not big, huge bodies, but he's got the quickness. And again, I talked about one of my close friends being a Titans fan, and I watched some Titans games with him last year, and there was a couple times they put him in at running back, and they ran a sweep play to Jonnu Smith, to spell Derrick Henry, and so that does explain a little bit of his athleticism, and he will line up anywhere. He'll run vertical routes, and if you're not paying attention to him, he'll sneak past a linebacker 100% of the time. So that's the guy to match up or look at this week. I would imagine Anthony Harris or Harrison Smith will be assigned to him quite a bit because he's been the most effective player at getting into the end zone for Tennessee the last couple weeks.
So interesting. It's interesting note here. I just looked this up because I also agree with you that at least physically and athletically, Jonnu Smith does hold a lot of similarities with Vernon Davis. They are both listed at 6'3", 248. They're literally the exact same size in the eyes of the NFL. So I think that comparison is definitely fair. The style of play is a little bit different. I think Vernon Davis ran like a sub 4.4 when he was younger, obviously. Jonnu Smith, not quite that fast, but I believe he still runs around a 4.6. So very athletic tight end, dangerous player, especially with the Vikings having Anthony Barr out. I know a lot of you guys hate on Anthony Barr, but I'm going to keep bringing this up. Having him out really, really hurts because it doesn't allow you to do a lot of the things you want to do. Instead of Anthony Barr potentially covering a tight end, now that responsibility falls on Eric Kendricks. So who's going to cover running backs out of the backfield now? What are you going to do with Harrison Smith if Harrison Smith gets caught on a tight end? I mean, you can't use him to his maximum potential. It's a dangerous situation for the Vikings, who we just established that they can't control the run, and I can't find a way for them to cover their best asset right now. I mean, you look at the Vikings defense, it's got to be Eric Kendricks that gets lined up on Smith, right? He's their like I said, he's probably their number one playmaker through 2 weeks. And if you're trying to slow down Derrick Henry, what options do you have? Because Eric Kendricks is also your best tackler, and he's the guy that shoots the gap. To me, like, you need to win one-on-one with Kendricks spying Tannehill and also taking care of Henry. One-on-one, Derrick Henry, with Eric Kendricks, who is under 6 feet tall. And Harrison Smith needs to line up over the tight end, Jonnu Smith, with someone bracketed over the top. That takes away your 3 best playmakers right there, trying to stop 2 of their guys.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
And then,
I don't know what the answer is. I'm not a football coach. I don't pretend to be, but look at these rosters. I don't see a way for the Vikings to. There is no obvious way to kind of stop the Titans' offense based off of their current personnel.
Right. Well, I agree with you, and the next step is going to be with, at some point Zimmer's gonna have to fire some. And here's the thing: Vikings' third down defense, man, hasn't been great. Especially early in games against the game script. The Derrick Henry is. I just envision. Remember you saw Jonathan Taylor last week, 10 or 12 carries first drive. and they went down and should have scored if Phillip Rivers doesn't throw the ball directly to Eric Wilson or whatever happened on that play. I think now Harrison Smith got in there, knocked it away, and Eric Wilson ended up with it. And you're right about this offense. It does, given the Vikings personnel and lack thereof in some spots with Barr out, Daniel Hunter out, and then their corners, the Vikings, you can't really trust any of them at this point. There's a lot of pressure on Kendricks. There's a lot of pressure on those safeties as well to keep these guys in check. So the Vikings are going to have to win a little bit more at the cornerback position to keep them like on those third down situations. But it's gonna start with first, second down. If you can contain Derrick Henry to the point where third down is a medium to long distance rather than 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, because I think that seems to be where the Vikings are getting beat the most and why they can't get off the field defensively.
Okay, so then the final piece then is the receiving options for Tennessee outside of Jonnu Smith. We've already mentioned A.J. Brown, who may or may not be active for this game. Corey Davis, who has been the primary wide receiver through a couple of weeks. And again, solid player. I don't think he's lived up to expectations, and I don't really see him ever living up to expectations. He could prove me wrong. Probably this weekend would be ample opportunity to do so, but I don't think that he is a breakthrough wide receiver by any means. I don't think he's going to shut down the game with his receiving skills, but the Vikings cornerback situation isn't going to help him out, isn't going to help the team that much right now. Now, if you've been paying attention to the injury report, Cameron Dantzler didn't practice today, and Mike Hughes, I believe, was either limited or didn't practice either. So, in my opinion, the Vikings' two best cornerbacks right now, I would say that Dantzler is superior to Holton Hill, at least from what I have seen, may or may not play this weekend. So you already have problems at the position, and it sounds like more problems are coming. So, if there is an opportunity for the wide receivers in this group, without A.J. Brown to find a way to get something done, it's probably against the Vikings secondary. And I hate to say that, but it's going to be Adam Humphries and Corey Davis for the most part, right? Who's covering who? Honestly, if Mike Hughes and Dantzler are out, you've probably got Holton Hill on Corey Davis. Holton Hill has been a disaster thus far. And I don't know who covers the slot, especially because Adam Humphries is a bigger slot receiver, and you need to do something about Jonnu Smith. So if Jonnu Smith is being covered by Harrison Smith, theoretically, who's on Adam Humphries? I just don't know. I don't know the answer to these questions, and that's a real problem for me when trying to, figure out what the Vikings are going to do this weekend. I think this is a personnel issue at this point because you've got injuries, you've got lack of production, you've got inexperience, you've got all of these things working against you, not to mention the fact that this team is completely demoralized through 2 weeks. If you think that getting beat bad 2 weeks in a row to open up a season doesn't hurt team morale and your ability to perform, well, you're wrong. It has for years, and it will continue to do so unless the Vikings find a way to turn it around. And, based off of these matchups, it's just not looking that good. Especially from, the Vikings defensive perspective. I just give me a reason. Give me a reason, Drew. What is it about this Titans offense that the Vikings can get something done against? Because you look at their offensive line too. Taylor Lewan and Roger Saffold are great players on the left side. You've got 3 players on the right side, well, counting the center, Ben Jones, Nate Davis, and Dennis Kelly, who are players, but they're not bad. Where's the hole? I don't see it.
So if there's this isn't a hole, but I think the fact that Henry is not a receiver is kind of nice, and he's not a 3 down back per se in that way. And so if you're able to contain him for a second down, and that's for this Vikings defense right now, very tall task, but that's a pun intended, by the way, because Derrick Henry is 6'4". But if you can get to that point, I'd like the Vikings' I like Mike Zimmer's chances, right, against Ryan Tannehill on a third down where he, with Henry not on the field, for example, and then A.J. Brown not on the field if he's not, active. So, here's the thing. I'm picking Tennessee with everybody healthy in this game. If Hunter's healthy, if Barr's healthy, if the Vikings' entire roster is healthy, I'm still picking the Titans. And that's just because I'm very high on the Titans already, and especially now with the way the season has played out for the Vikings so far, with the injuries, with the complete lack of everything for Minnesota. It's tough to pick it's tough to pick them right now, and that's even before going to the other side of the ball here for both teams.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do just that. I think we've established that the Vikings have their work cut out for them defensively this weekend. So offensively, coming off of, so as we stated on the previous show, probably Kirk Cousins' worst performance in his entire career, not just as a Viking, but period. He gets matched up with a defense that has some solid playmakers, also has some holes, also has a couple of key injuries as well. So starting with this defensive line, they're going to run a 3-4. Mike Vrabel calls the shots here. They didn't even hire a defensive coordinator, which I think is hilarious, by the way. Mike Vrabel is just straight up the guy that is going to do everything for this defense. And of course, that defense kind of mimics what he ran when he was with New England Patriot back in the day. So that 3-4 unit starts up front with Jack Crawford, Daquan Jones, and Jeffrey Simmons. Of those three players, I think Simmons is probably the most dominant, probably the most dangerous of that group. But nothing really scares you about the front three. It's more the linebackers with Jadeveon Clowney, the big offseason signing, or I guess, does it even count as the offseason when he signed like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, probably not.
Other than Clowney within that front seven, right? I don't, there's not a ton of guys that scare you. And even Clowney, I think, to a degree, and I say this, this is probably a questionable statement, but I don't think Clowney's as good as advertised. He's not as great of a pass rusher as we all thought he was going to be. He's a very, very solid overall defensive player. Now he's putting his hand in the dirt. Well, he's standing up and putting his hand in the dirt, not just a defensive end anymore. But outside of him, Harold Landry, Rashaan Evans, Jayon Brown, Vic Beasley, I guess, gets rotated in as well. Outside of Clowney, is there anyone in that front seven that scares you?
Jayon Brown, I like him a lot.
Yeah.
From when I've watched from the Titans, he's a really good and efficient blitzer there, but it is also very rangy. I don't want to put him in the Eric Kendricks level, of course, but he does show a lot of those flashes of kind of how did he get to this part in the field so quick, and so I like Jayon Brown from that perspective, and that will be I'll be watching him on some of those outside zone runs that the Vikings like to do, and very popular in the Gary Kubiak offense with Dalvin Cook. Or Alexander Madison or whomever is carrying the ball. So that's one I'll watch. But of course, I think overall, I'm going to give the edge at this point to the Tennessee front seven if we're going to compare that to the Vikings and their offense right now. Just because why would I say otherwise given the first 2 weeks of the season?
I can't blame you. And it's also worth noting that the strength of this defense is not not the defensive line, not the linebacker group. It's probably the secondary here. A lot of talent in this group, and that's already missing Adoree Jackson, by the way. So you've got Malcolm Butler, of course, a Super Bowl hero with New England, has bounced around since basically since making that play and getting paid. Has not necessarily been as much of a stud as I think Tennessee may have hoped, but still a very, very solid cornerback. And opposite him is Jonathan Joseph, who is ageless, by the way. I looked it up before. He played for Mike Zimmer when Mike Zimmer was coaching in Cincinnati, so you could put that into perspective. He also spent about half a decade with Houston after being coached by Mike Zimmer. He is almost 37 years old and playing man coverage against receivers in the NFL. Extremely impressive player. He's getting by with not necessarily his talent anymore. This is a guy that used to run a 4.3, I believe. I highly doubt it's anywhere close to that anymore. But a very savvy veteran, knows where to be, knows all the coverages, knows where everyone else around him is supposed to be. So he puts the Titans in a great position for Kevin Byard, arguably one of the most. It's kind of replaced Harrison Smith as the most underrated safety in the NFL, I think. Absolute stud, a ball hawk that is a turnover machine, and playing next to Kenny Vaccaro, who is basically a glorified linebacker. This secondary could do a lot of damage, and that's not even including the fact that Christian Fulton has barely played yet.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, like you said, there's talent there, and I worry about some of these. I worry about this man. I'm just here's the thing, man. Every week this passing game looks like this, I'm going to be worried about the secondary that they play, right? And I think I'm trying to look ahead a little bit here, and I just don't see a game where I'm like, oh, this Vikings offense can definitely take advantage of that defense. So, but yeah, in the secondary here, I like Byard a lot. That guy's a playmaker, and I think you are absolutely spot on when you say, there's that safety that hasn't been appreciated, maybe because he's in a smaller market or a team that's not, spotlighted by the media as much in Tennessee. I think Byard's that guy now that Harrison Smith used to sort of have that role. I do like Fulton long term at corner for Tennessee, but he's not getting a ton of run at this point. But and then if Jonathan Joseph added, yeah, you're right, ageless. So it's going to be up to Jefferson and BC Johnson. I think Thielen can beat any of these guys pretty easily, but as we've seen, especially against the Colts, that Adam Thielen winning against one guy doesn't really matter sometimes because there's bracketed coverage, or for whatever reason he's not the first read. Kirk will not go off the script of the first read. If it's if the first read is BC Johnson, on a post route down the middle of the field, that's where he's going to look first, even if Thielen's wide open on the other side of the field. So, it's going to be up to BC, Justin Jefferson, Irv Smith maybe, and those guys to win.
So what, offensively speaking for the Vikings, what do they got to do? Like where's the hole defensively for this Titan team? I mean, of course, we just mentioned that, the front three is not massively successful, at least to date. But there are playmakers at the other two levels and very well compensated playmakers at that. What do the Vikings have to do to get something done here? Because like I said, Clowney may not be the best pass rusher in the world, but he's definitely one of the best at stopping the run relative to his position. And he can line up from all over the place. And of course, the Vikings' biggest asset right now is Dalvin Cook. He's got to get by Clowney. He's got to get by Brown, like you mentioned before, a rangy linebacker. And of course, Vaccaro is going to play up in the box. And they can stack the box right now because, like you said, Kirk Cousins he's throwing to Adam Thielen or he's throwing to nowhere. So what can the Vikings do to give themselves an edge on the offensive side of the football this week?
I think offensive side of the ball, it's about finding a way to be effective after the first series of scripted plays. I think, they win. That first drive has been pretty solid first two games, right? I think they go down and get 3 points both times. And it really, I think both were short field goals too, where they could have, they were within striking distance of 6 points. And then after that, it's clunky, it's inefficient, there's no rhythm at all to the calls, and it seems like everybody's out of sync immediately when that second drive begins. And I think that's where you can quickly lose steam in a football game, right? Because then you get a 3 and out there, and when your defense isn't stopping anything, as Minnesota's has not, that gives the opposition, another drive quickly to get down and score with pretty good field position. So keeping your offense on schedule after the first drive is going to be key. And then, I think the Vikings, I think the weakness of this, if there's a weakness to attack, I think it's a secondary compared to that front seven personally. And so I would be looking at Justin Jefferson and BC Johnson, because chances are Thielen's going to get bracketed and he won't have a ton of one-on-one opportunities. And we've seen in his career too, over the span of his career, when Diggs is not healthy enough to play, Thielen is not super productive when he's sort of that only top weapon, so to speak. And so Jefferson and Johnson, and then that chemistry with Kirk has got to be better, because that'll be the best chance the Vikings have to win each week, in my opinion.
So the Vikings definitely got to control tempo, right? Especially offensively. We've established that that's kind of what the Titans, that's what their game is, right? Holding onto the football for long drives, eating up clock, tiring out the defense. Well, the Vikings game plan this week is to do that, is to do what the Titans do well. Hold on to the damn football. At this point, they got to go for it. They got to go for it on fourth down sometimes. On fourth and short, you got to find a way to keep the offense on the field. And that's going to involve taking some risks. So to me, the only shot that the Vikings had of it winning this game is controlling tempo and succeeding when you're taking shots. That doesn't mean just, going for it on fourth. That means we got to work the ball down the field too. And complete some passes, right? How many deep balls has Kirk accurately thrown so far this season? Not a ton, right? There's a couple in garbage time, I suppose, but the Vikings need to find a way to get this offense running efficiently. And I think you're absolutely right that it's about making those in-game adjustments. And I know that's very cliche, but it's so true for this Vikings team. they have not adjusted well, whether it's Mike Zimmer calling defensive plays or Gary Kubiak calling offensive plays. It simply has not been a well-oiled machine, to say the least. So that brings us to our picks here, and I think that we've already both established that we're going Titans here. How bad is this one going to be?
Oh, that's where it's got to now, huh? It's about how bad it's going to be. Give me Titans by 10 points because of garbage time. I think the Vikings figure out a garbage time score to bring it within 10, but it'll be worse than that.
Yeah, I'm going to say Titans by 3 scores. I'll say they win by 17. My pick would be 34 to 17. 34 to 17 is my final. That's my guess.
Right.
I don't see the Vikings.
How many Derrick Henry touchdowns? Over under 2.5?
Under. I'm going to go under 2.5 because that's suggesting that he might have 3. But right. I think 2. I think 2 is the number. I expect 2 Derrick Henry touchdowns for sure.
All right, good. I just traded for him in another league, so better.
I think all of Twitter saw that.
With this game in mind, and yeah, Twitter did see that.
All right. Let's move quickly into our game picks here and wrap up the show with that. Both of us are rolling with Tennessee this week. I don't foresee any reason for either of us to be picking the Vikings anytime soon. So that's kind of a no-brainer. But there's some great matchups this week. This is, it sucks as a Vikings fan to walk into a week 0-2 and not see a whole lot of Super Bowl potential anymore. But if you're a lover of pure football, this is the week for you. And it kind of, honestly, I know this Thursday night matchup isn't fantastic based on pedigree, but Miami at Jacksonville.
It's not sexy, but
Miami at Jacksonville is fun. It's fun matchup for sure.
Very fun, and I'll be picking Jacksonville. I watched the Jacksonville Tennessee game pretty closely, and for a team that's had essentially every star player want out immediately, they seem to have like a chip on their shoulder, I guess, or they gel well together for guys that it seems like they're all like they have this aura like we're all rejects and nobody wants to play with us, so we're gonna go show people what we're made of type of thing. And I think Gardner Minshew kind of leads the charge there. So plus fellow Johnny Ben Barch is on the roster there. He is 1-1 in his NFL career, so gotta go with the Jags.
All right, so I'm going to go with Jacksonville. I like your reasoning. I'm going to go the opposite side here. Miami's just not good enough right now. Fitzpatrick's still the quarterback. Devontae Parker's playing hurt. They don't have a whole lot of talent other than that right now. So I'm going to say that Jacksonville, who also doesn't have a whole lot of talent either, but is playing with grit, to say the least. I think they're a fun team to watch right now.
Yeah, they beat Indianapolis week 1. They did, and that's something the Vikings did not do. So,
all right. So we're both rolling with Jacksonville. Next one here, Chicago at Atlanta. Kind of a fun matchup given the circumstances. I mean, Atlanta's very close to being 2-0. They played a lot better last week against the Cowboys than I think we thought they would, but then they ultimately did the Atlanta thing and blew it at the end, of course.
That, by the way, I don't know if people have seen the onside kick. That is the worst thing I have ever seen in football. I saw somebody tweet that the Falcons should be investigated for throwing the game, and that's literally what it looked like. Like the Falcons players are
standing around like
they're huddling around the ball and doing anything but trying to win the game. And you recover that ball, you win the game. Oh, that's unbelievable. I'm picking the Falcons despite all of that, just because I don't like the Bears. Trubisky's bad, and beating the Giants at home by the smallest of margins does not make you good.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Atlanta too. First of all, Calvin Ridley off to a tremendous start, by the way. My God, that guy's a machine right now. Julio Jones on the flip side of that, not as hot of a start.
See the touchdown he dropped last week?
I did. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking about when I said that. But Matt Ryan still looks like a good quarterback. Chicago doesn't have one of those. So I'm going to take Atlanta here, and I'm going to be petty too. We need this right now. Chicago, like if you could.
Okay, it's time to give up on the division. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
I'm saying we need this personally. I need I read
to also be bad.
Yes, I read a meme the other day that Vikings fans care more about when the Packers and Bears lose than when the Vikings win. And right now, that's how I feel because my Super Bowl dreams are crushed. I need Detroit and Green Bay to lose, and I think that I don't see Green Bay losing this week. They could. It's against the Saints, I suppose, but I do think Atlanta has the edge here, so I'm going to take Atlanta. That brings us to another interesting matchup here. The Rams and the Bills, both teams playing very, very well to open the season. Josh Allen had that horrendous miss in the end zone in week 1. He came back with one of the most productive performances of his career. I know you Vikings fans love this, but he is clicking on all cylinders with Stephon Diggs right now. Can they get it done against the Los Angeles Rams?
I'm going to pick the Rams. I'm going to keep sort of, I guess, doubting Josh Allen, right, until, he goes in and dominates a playoff game. Because this team's loaded, man. This roster's loaded in Buffalo. And I think the one thing missing is, do they have that quarterback that can take them? And I'm still a doubter of Allen. He's not very accurate, but he does enough with his leg to keep this team winning. And so that's the thing that I'm held up on. I think the Rams are very talented right now. I don't love Goff either, but I'll pick the Rams just because I think this is a tougher test than Allen's had the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm picking the Rams as well, and it comes down to defense. I mean, when you've got Aaron Donald in your face and Jalen Ramsey over the top, good luck, Josh Allen. I'm picking the Rams as well. The next one here is Cleveland and Washington. On paper, that sounds like a real barn burner, I know, but it could be interesting. I mean, Washington has played above expectations with Ron Rivera as their coach. Cleveland didn't look terrible last week, right? They got a W coming off of that's the first week that they've been able to say that in a while. So I know that Mayfield has some things to iron out. I know that, Odell Beckham is not quite playing up to the level that many of us have expected. But I do think that they have the pieces here, especially against a Washington team that is depleted of basically all assets. They're in rebuild mode right now, and I don't personally think that Dwayne Haskins is going to be the guy, at least based off what I've seen through a year and a half or so. Can Washington go into Cleveland? This is a hilarious question. Can Washington go into Cleveland and get a win here?
No, I mean, I'm picking the Browns. There's more talent there. Kevin Stefanski, I'm not quite giving up on him yet.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Cleveland as well. I think they have more talent. Easily stated, right? Next one here, Oakland coming off of the biggest win of John Gruden's second tenure with the organization over the New Orleans Saints. Derek Carr looked pretty good, right? He looked like the...
Darren Waller looked really good.
Darren Waller did look really good too. But Derek Carr looked like the
2016,
15 or 16, right? He looked like the MVP candidate from October of 2016.
Yeah.
Whatever. You know what I'm talking about, right? He looked very good. And they're going up against New England. Cam Newton also looks very good. I would love to say that goal line play is unstoppable, but of course Seattle stopped it at the last moment. But prior to that, I mean, how many times does Cam Newton get stopped at the goal line if they do that play 10 times? I think Oakland has their work cooked. Yeah, exactly. I think Oakland has their work cut out for them. Can John Gruden get another staple win here against Bill Belichick?
I'm going to say no. I don't know if you saw Bill Belichick today when he was addressing the media and his it looked like he just rolled out of bed, but actually what probably was the case is he was up the entire night grinding film after losing to Seattle. This guy's going to be prepared for Oakland. He's not losing twice in a row. So I got the Patriots winning.
Yeah, I got the Patriots winning too, and it's for the reason that you just said. Bill Belichick doesn't lose 2 times in a row. The next one here, San Francisco at the New York Giants. On paper, it sounds like an absolute mismatch, but San Francisco is now missing Nick Bosa, Raheem Mostert. Jimmy Garoppolo has a chance to not play. George Kittle, I read it would be ambitious for him to play this week. They don't have a lot of their stars. I know that Kyle Shanahan is one of the best schemers in the league, and of course you can't lose him to injury. But do they have enough assets right now to get it done against New York, who, granted, it is worth noting, they also lost their greatest offensive playmaker in Saquon Barkley to an ACL this week.
For the sake of picking an upset, I'm going to pick the Giants just because it's a little different. And I think this is one where the Niners are going to be very tentative on that turf, man, after last week at MetLife. And
they go right back to it.
You got to go right back there. And so shout out to the NFL for scheduling that, right? And I would imagine that I don't know what the case is, but I'm imagining that they stayed in New York because that would be kind of terrible scheduling for them to go fly back to San Fran and then go back to New York twice in a row. Anyway, I'm picking the Giants just because I want to pick an upset and it'd be funny if they lost.
I'm going to take San Francisco because the Giants are bad.
It's true. I won't defend that. That's correct.
It's going to be Devontae Freeman for the Giants now in the backfield. He
probably won't play on Sunday though. I would
don't think
imagine
so?
with the COVID testing and stuff
Ah,
that
that's a
takes
good point.
forever.
That's a good
Probably
point.
won't. Probably have to be next week. So it'll be what is it? Deion Lewis and
Wayne Gallman,
Wayne Gallman.
who I do like, by the way. So
Yeah.
I guess we'll see. I'm taking San Francisco, so we're split on that one. Cincinnati at Philadelphia. Philly kind of looks like a disaster. Cincinnati doesn't
Philly
seem like
called
they're
me this
quite
week to
there
be
yet.
a receiver. I'm going to go through a physical and COVID protocol, and I might be an Eagle next week, and this show might be on postponement. So we'll
Kind of
see.
look like that slot receiver that Tom Brady's throwing to now. What is it, Shelby Miller or something like that?
Something Miller, yeah.
About the same frame as him.
Hey, put me in some pads. You never know. I'm going to pick Cincinnati. I like the swagger that Joe Burrow has, and I feel like I don't know, something with Philly just doesn't feel right now. Chemistry's way off with Carson Wentz. There's something not going right there, and I think they're sort of in a similar mode mindset as the Vikings right now, where they're kind of wondering, are they going the wrong way? Is this the end maybe of the Wentz and Peterson run here? Who knows?
So I'm going to take Cincinnati as well. I think this is as good as time as any for Joe Burrow to get his first career win. You're playing against a depleted Philadelphia team who has also, like the Vikings, been completely demoralized through 2 weeks. So I will be picking Cincinnati in this one as well. Another good one here. I believe this is an afternoon game. Houston at Pittsburgh. So Deshaun Watson crossing swords with Ben Roethlisberger. Pittsburgh has looked really, really good. Houston has looked really, really bad. Now, that all being said, Houston, in theory, is still a very good football team. Pittsburgh, on the other hand, might be a lot better than I think we thought they were.
Houston's bad.
Houston's
Shout out
bad?
to Bill O'Brien. Shout out to Bill O'Brien. Houston's bad. I got Pittsburgh.
So we're both one pit here? Yep. Okay. I'm on board with Pittsburgh being potentially an AFC championship game representative this year based off the way that they've been playing through 2 weeks. Not a big sample size, but my God, that defense is dangerous.
It was super under the radar too, that Big Ben is just back. And like, I feel like nobody really talked about that when sort of previewing the 2020 season. Hey, Big Ben, guy's won 2 Super Bowls, still clearly can fling the ball around and do some of the
Juju exists again. Because
right. Well, yeah, Duck Hodges was the Steelers quarterback last year for a number of games. That's a little different than Big Ben. And they were still, 500 last year? I mean, come on.
Close to. So, all right. The next one up here is really one of the few poor matchups this weekend, in my opinion. That's the Jets, the Colts. We just saw what the Colts can do. I think we're all aware of what the Jets can't do. We're getting close to Adam Gase getting fired territory, I think.
Did you have you seen that Sam Darnold throw that's all over Twitter?
Where he's kind of rolls out and flicks it with his wrist.
That is the biggest win for the Jets franchise in the last 3 years, right there. Is that highlight now going out on Twitter when they were down 31-6 and Darnold threw a touchdown to get down by 18 in the fourth quarter. Give me the Colts. The Jets are just too bad.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I'm going with Indianapolis as well. Chugging along here, Carolina takes on the Los Angeles Chargers. Both of these teams are having some very interesting issues right now. Of course, the Chargers with Tyrod Taylor right now. This is going to be a major lawsuit. If you're not familiar, the Chargers team doctor just punctured.
Well, I saw today on Twitter. I don't know if this is true. This is just, you can't believe everything you see on Twitter. But if a player accepts medical treatment from the team doctors, they cannot sue or something like that. Now, this do not fact check me on this because that could be wrong. I simply just read something on Twitter. But if that's the case, that sucks, man. That sucks for Taylor.
Either way, I think this is a
either way you feel bad for him. Yeah.
This is a multi-million-dollar settlement, I think. And then on the flip side, of course, Carolina just put Christian McCaffrey on IR. So it's Teddy Bridgewater's show, and Mike Davis is going to be stepping in to replace him. And then, of course, you've got Justin Herbert, who will be getting his first planned start this weekend.
Yeah.
Looked pretty good in his debut for what it's worth. Who you got in this one?
Yeah. I got the Chargers. Herbert looked pretty solid. And, that defense is legit. No joke. I think Teddy's got a lot of work cut out for him because they made Mahomes and company look, I don't want to say bad, but they definitely stumbled over their feet a little bit against the Chargers defense. So I'll pick LA.
I'm going to take the Chargers as well. I think that point that you made about Mahomes, I mean, the Chiefs' offense was basically, non-existent until about 18.
I mean, it was just an offense. It was just fine. And that's definitely not, the Andy Reid Chiefs offense we've seen the last couple of years.
Absolutely. All right, so Chargers for both of us. Next one here. Tom Brady's going up against, I don't even know. Who's starting for Denver at quarterback this week? I
It's
don't
either
know.
Jeff Driscoll or it's Blake Bortles.
I
One of
think
the
it's gonna
two.
be Jeff. I think it's gonna be Jeff Driscoll again, who replaced Drew Lock when he went out with an injury last week. He's now expected to miss what I think it was 2 to 5 weeks, which is an interesting timetable. But nevertheless, Tom Brady gets a chance to move back over 500 here at Denver. Does he get it done?
I'm gonna pick Denver. I'm holding out hope on Denver, and part of that is because I have a bet with a person that the Denver Broncos will make the playoffs. But I think Denver played pretty well against Pittsburgh. Even when Locke went down, they kind of battled quite a bit and had a chance at the end there against a really good Pittsburgh team. And so now against Tampa Bay, who I feel has not quite lived up to the expectations that maybe some had so far, I think Denver can win.
So I'm going to take Tampa Bay, strictly because I don't believe in Jeff Driscoll at all. I think that Tampa Bay.
That's fair, and that's fair. I don't think I do either, but I still pick
All right, so Tampa Bay for me, Denver for Drew. Moving on here, these last 4 games of the week are exceptional in my personal opinion. We'll start here with Detroit and Arizona. I know Detroit's not the most exciting team in the world, but Matthew Stafford against Kyler Murray sounds like a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, Arizona, by the way, that offense looks awesome right now.
So much fun.
Kyler Murray to DeAndre Hopkins looks like it could be, an awesome combination to watch for a while. I'm going to pick the Cardinals. I still think Detroit nah. I mean, they're still the Detroit Lions.
So what is that rule on how every single year a team that sucked ass ends up making the playoffs the following year? It's like every single year you see a team that goes from worst to first. It's like 75%.
There's probably something like that, and you're saying it could be the Cardinals?
I'm saying it could be the Cardinals. Yeah, they're my pick to be that team this year.
The problem is that division, that NFC West division looks elite, like one of the best maybe ever. If San Francisco can get healthy, that is going to be a dogfight for that division.
That's an excellent point, but to ramp up to what I was getting to there, that Detroit beats themselves, and I think that I think that Cliff Kingsbury has kind of found a rhythm there. I think Kyler Murray's a lot better than I personally thought he was going to be. I mean, did you see that play that got called back last week where he kind of high-stepped the linebacker and walked into the left corner of the end zone? My God, that guy is talented. I'm going Arizona as well. All right, Dallas at Seattle. Another fun one here. Russell Wilson against Dak Prescott. Prescott looked pretty good last week. They get that, like we were talking about before, that very strange win over Atlanta. Seattle on the flip side went toe-to-toe. Like literally, well, it was more head-to-head the way that, Quandre Diggs was playing last week. But who gets the win here, Russell Wilson or Dak Prescott playing in Seattle?
I will pick Russ. I do think this will be a fun game, though. I really like both teams here. I still believe in Dallas to a degree, even though for essentially 3.9 quarters last week they were the worst team against Atlanta. But I'll pick Seattle until really Russ proves me that he can have a bad game.
Follow-up question to that before I give you my pick: is this Russell Wilson's year to win MVP finally?
I mean, he needs one, right? He deserves one. At this rate, I still don't think Seattle's roster is that great. So if he can end up, get Seattle to like a 2 seed, 1 seed, yeah, I think so.
I do as well. So I'm going to pick Seattle too. They're a well-oiled machine for some reason. I mean, like you said, it's Russell Wilson and who else? DK Metcalf. That's basically it.
Metcalf and Lockett are a pretty solid duo receiver, but
also very underrated duo too.
The pass protection has not been great for a while in Seattle, and then that defense has lost its luster quite a bit.
Exactly. Excellent. All right, so I'm going Seattle too. That brings us to the Sunday Night Football matchup. The Green Bay Packers are playing against the Saints. Packers look really, really good through 2 weeks. The Saints a little bit wishy-washy. Not their best performance last week for sure in a loss to the Las Vegas Raiders, excuse me. Fun matchup, though, between two future Hall of Fame quarterbacks. A lot of talent on both these rosters. Aaron Jones and Alvin Kamara is a fun kind of not on the same field at the same time matchup as well to see who can come up with the most all-purpose yards. Who do you have in this game?
This game's at Lambeau, correct?
No, this is in New Orleans.
This is in New Orleans. Okay. Because of that, I think I'll take the Saints. I was going to say Drew Brees on the road is the most washed quarterback in the league, but I think at home, even without fans, I still think he's just an extra sense of comfortability in that stadium. And I think the Saints come out on top just barely. I think that'll be a fun one, though.
So this one to me is a flip of the coin. Since you picked New Orleans, I'm going to take Green Bay. I think both these teams are, high-powered offenses. I said last week, and I stand by this, that New Orleans is my Super Bowl pick until they get eliminated in the first round by some ridiculous play. But this week, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is playing as good as anyone. I know we're talking about Russell Wilson and even Cam Newton to a degree.
Rodgers is just as much of an elite player through 2 weeks as Russ or as really anybody right now. Right. Josh Allen's in that category too, believe it or not.
And speaking of elite football play, that brings us to the final matchup here. This might be the best football matchup on paper that I've seen in 2, 3, 4 years probably. I can't think of a matchup that really struck me like this one did in a while in the regular season.
It would have been remember that Rams Chiefs 2018, I believe.
Right. The one that was like 48 to 51, 51 to 48,
something like that.
Yeah. All right, so Kansas City at Baltimore is the matchup that we are referring to. Patrick Mahomes against Lamar Jackson. Two extremely talented quarterbacks, obviously a lot of talented playmakers on the outside, a lot of speed. I mean, this could be a really, really fun matchup. So how does this one first of all, how do you make a pick on this one? They're two great teams. I don't know what the differentiator is without fans in the stadium in Baltimore, but who are you going with?
I'm going with Kansas City. And I think for whatever reason that AFC playoff game, Ravens, the way they just got destroyed by Tennessee is still stuck in my mind a little bit. And I just don't see the way. I think the poor performance by the Chiefs last week is still netted a win. And so I think that's about as bad as it gets for them. So I'm going to pick the Chiefs until further notice, really. I mean, I pick them against anybody, anywhere right now.
Yep. I'm going to the Chiefs as well. And the differentiator for me personally, Patrick Mahomes is the better quarterback. They're both very, very good quarterbacks. They're also very different quarterbacks. And I think that Patrick Mahomes' talent translates more to consistency than Lamar Jackson's does. I'm not saying that Lamar Jackson isn't consistent. He's the MVP for a reason. But that being said, Patrick Mahomes is the Super Bowl MVP for a reason. I'm going with Kansas City as well.
And fun fact, by the way, the Chiefs have won their last 6 games when they trail by double digits.
Interesting. That'd be that's a nice stat.
Like, I mean, it's fun because the Ravens might get up 10-0, 17-0, and it's like that's whatever. That means the Chiefs are probably going to end up winning anyway.
All right, so that wraps up our pick for the week. To give you an update on where we stand now, both Drew and I went 11-5 last week. Between the two of us, we nearly picked every game correct. But ultimately, I have a 1-game edge through 2 weeks at 21-11, with Drew standing at 20-12 heading into week 3 of the NFL season. So with all that being said, that wraps up our show for the week. Thank you for going through this kind of dismal week with us. I know it was not the most fun week of content, but thank you for paying attention and sticking with us here. Make sure to check out the rest of the Climbing the Pocket Network for more Vikings and NFL content. We are on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, and everywhere else that podcasts can be found. And, of course, you can find Drew and myself on YouTube if you prefer to watch the show instead of listening to it. So, as always, thank you for listening, and we will catch you next week.